First off, we're going to talk about some news, particularly in the restaurant and retail space. Later on, we're going to talk about JAB Holdings rumors that they're going to spin off their coffee and restaurant chains into two separate IPOs. But first, we have some news out of Papa John's Pizza. Papa John's has been in the news over the last year in a very public battle with their founder and largest shareholder, Papa John Schnatter. This past week, we got some news about that conflict between Papa John's and Papa John. Dan, can you talk to us about what that news was?
Well, Papa John was suing his namesake company because he was somewhat forced out of his role as executive chairman and really forced out of day-to-day operations, along with things like he was entitled to office space, he had certain levels of control. All of those things were kind of kicked to the side. And the company had adopted, let's call it a poison pill, to make sure that he wasn't the person that bought the company when, for a while, they were looking to be sold. Now they've taken $200 million from Starboard, and they're not so much on the market. So the two got together, and to make this all awkward, Papa John was still on the board. So imagine, I'm sure you have someone like this in your family, someone who is suing everybody else, but still comes to Thanksgiving.
Right. I can make the relationship extra complicated. And, you know, when you have a company whose name is synonymous with Papa John, it's in the name, and with him still being the largest shareholder, you know, agitating for changes within the company, this is a significant development because now Papa John, no longer being on the board, no longer has a formal relationship with the business outside of his share position.
So that was the settlement. Papa John agreed to drop his lawsuit, resign from the board. He will have a role in choosing the independent director that replaces him. They didn't quite spell it out, but I think they need to agree. So whoever that person is. But Papa John owns 26% of the company, and they have removed the poison pill. So yes, he's gone, but if the stock continues to stumble, I think there's every chance he tries to buy it back, and it becomes sort of a battle, but at least a battle where he has recused himself from being on the board and sort of voting on his own proposals.
Right. And this is going to be an interesting battle. You know, Papa John's has struggled, recently, out of the controversy that, Papa John himself may have contributed to. We've seen EPS trade down almost 50% in the past year. You mentioned to me before the show, their same-store sales have declined 8.1% in the most recent quarter and 7.3% for the full year. So as we see, maybe Papa John's being back on the market for sale, maybe Papa John Schnatter playing a role in this. It's going to be some near-term news around that transaction, but we have to question what's going on with the brand because go ahead.
I think the Papa John controversy just sort of accelerated some of the brand problems. Because if you look at who are they competing with, they're competing with Domino's. They're competing with more expensive pizza that has moved into the better space that Papa John's is always trying to sort of falsely stake out. Like maybe it's better than Domino's or, I don't know, Elio's in your frozen pizza, but they are facing a ton of competition. But what Domino's does exceptionally well is execute. You can get a Domino's pizza inexpensively, quickly, through a variety of different platforms. They have a really easy-to-use app. They're easy to call up and order from. And Papa John's had not brought its technology about. They were sort of relying on this like, hey, we're better. So, better pizza, better ingredients. What scares me is that the chairman of the board continues to say we want to focus on better pizza, better ingredients, though the CEO does talk about how they need to improve their app, they need to get their technology better. They need to make it as easy to get a Papa John's pizza as it is to get a Domino's pizza, because you're not ordering either of those pizzas because they're good pizza, unless you're 11.
Right, Dan, and we were chatting about this, before we started recording, and I may get Austin Morgan to jump in and give us his thoughts on this. But we've kind of seen in recent years, as you mentioned, Papa John's brand was built around the better ingredients, better pizza mentality, and when we've had all these new places come in, local operators that are selling quality pizza, it's just going to be, it's been very difficult for Papa John's to differentiate itself on quality. And meanwhile, we've seen Domino's and Pizza Hut and these others really push towards the whole concept of convenience and low prices, which is going to attract, you know, the customers that are buying from these large pizza chains. You know, Austin, when's the last time you ordered from Papa John's, and you know, how has your pizza buying experience changed maybe in recent years?
You know, I think the only time I ever really order Papa John's is when I'm having a bunch of people over and the Nats or Caps won by 4 or whatever the deal is to get that Caps 50, Nats 50, and I'm only paying half price. That's the only time I order Papa John's.
Right, because it's cheap. You know what I mean? When you're talking about these Papa John's, Domino's folks, you know, Pizza Hut, throw Pizza Hut in there as well. It just seems they're all really competing on the factor of convenience and price, and it's just really difficult to differentiate yourself from a quality perspective these days. Dan, what do you think about, you know, with Papa John himself, Papa John Schnatter, leaving his formal role with the business, and these questions around the brand? You know, what are your thoughts on Papa John's moving forward over the next couple of years?
I would rebrand. I don't think there's any positive equity in the Papa John's name. I think as long as you can move your anyone who has your app into the new name, which is obviously easy enough to do, I would focus on execution and make that part of the name. Quick pizza, speedy pizza, like, you know, whatever, because I don't believe a $5.99 pizza or a $6.99, whatever it is, can be as good as all of these sort of 20 to 50 location, fast casual, make your own pizza. And in most cases, you know, blank town house of pizza is better than Domino's or better than Papa John's. They're just not particularly good at delivery or execution or answering the phone. So everything about this has to be making the brand something that matters to consumers. And Domino's has shown that quality is not the key ingredient. You can't go below a certain level, you know, and maybe they should promote, hey, we're going to redo our pizza recipe, much like Domino's did a few years ago. And I would argue they made their pizza different, not necessarily better. And then really try to get away from this Papa John's. I don't think the ads they're running now, where to sort of combat the controversy, they're just showing all the different owners and how diverse they are. I don't think that speaks to the average consumer who just remembered that they got Domino's because they could press a button and get Domino's. They didn't really follow the business page controversy of this.
Right. I think it's definitely going to be an interesting story to continue to follow. You know, for investors, resolving this conflict with you know, Mr. Schnatter really maybe is a break in the clouds, at least from what we've seen, kind of tarnishing the stock, you know, over the past year. However, there are some real questions about, even notwithstanding all the issues around the Papa John, whether the brand Papa John can really position you know, its pizza and its restaurants for success moving into the future. Definitely going to be something to continue to watch.
I think, and as a final thought, we talked about this yesterday when we were preparing the show. One of the drags on Papa John's that doesn't get talked about is they tend to, and this is anecdotal, be in sort of lesser locations than Domino's is. So as we have this sort of retail space crunch, maybe they were in the OK Plaza that had a couple of vacancies. Now that plaza is like a chiropractor and a Papa John's, whereas Domino's is in the plaza that has the CVS and the other thriving businesses. So I think there might just be a whole retail shakeout where they have to look at their portfolio and maybe consider relocating some stores and investing. I mean, Domino's is redoing a lot of its stores and they look a lot nicer. Papa John's has a pretty dated look if you visit their stores.
Right. This is a very competitive industry, pizza. I think for our listeners, we've kind of painted the picture that way, particularly when it comes to, you know, Domino's, like you said, has made some really significant investments in, you know, bringing up to date on their technology and their locations that, you know, Papa John's is going to have to match serve. So something to continue to follow. This is a really important brand. I don't think it's a brand that's going to disappear overnight. However, there are some real questions here in the near term